the minutes from our last meeting, and if there's a motion to adopt, we'll entertain that.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, minutes from last meeting are adopted. Committee members, if you would, if you look at our agenda, we have two, what are gonna be probably very quick perfunctory items. Oh, they are on the front end, so I don't have to have them. Okay. Trying to leave room at the end for a more open-ended RSA conversation. So, Ms. Standridge, item number 1, new business, general fund reserve for future improvements, budget revision number 3.
Yes, sir, thank you. And we tried to create the agenda this week to be able to keep
Thank you.
the easier ones at the beginning and then the more substantive one at the end. So these two, number 1 and number 2, are going to both be for the fire department. This first one, general fund reserve for future improvements fund budget revision number 3, is for a grant that they received from Homeland Security for the purchase of a fire suppression pump on a vehicle. It's $40,908, so we're just proposing to increase a revenue budget line item and then also increase an equipment line item for purchasing of that pump.
Okay, and when will we see the expenditure?
When?
We're trying to get it, we should be rather quickly. It's on a purchasing co-op, so we should be able to get it moving.
Okay,
Delivery will be about 230 days.
Mr. Chair.
yeah.
And it's a cart, by the way.
That's what I was going to ask.
I was gonna ask
What
you
does it do?
I thought fire trucks were fire suppression.
This is similar to one of our rescue carts. It's an ATV that has a fire pump in the back of it. 100 gallons or 95 gallons of water, 5 gallons of foam, 75 foot of hose.
Okay.
Motion approved.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion is approved. Item number 2, Ms. Standridge.
The next one is general fund budget revision number 4. So this is another grant that the fire department has received, but this is for operating expenses. Ergo, the reason that it's in the general fund budget for revision. Just using up my brownie points. So this is a total of $52,174 from FEMA Assistance to Firefighters Grant. This one does require a match. This is about an $8,000 match that the fire department has found within their repairs and supplies line item that we will be moving out of and then into just a regular grant revenue account, and then to be able to purchase equipment and then outside services for a training program.
Okay, Chief, so 52 in grants, we add 8, there's 60, and it's gonna be spent on training?
Yes, sir. It's
Tell us what that is.
Physical fitness program. It goes along.
Physical fitness program.
It's-
You're gonna
it
take
is
them out to the
that
gauntlet obstacle
equipment.
course.
That's what they need to go
It
to.
goes
right?
along with the money that y'all have put in the budget for the physicals that the firefighters are starting.
Uh-huh,
That was one thing, before we went to any major physical assessment or physical agility test, we wanted to make sure everybody was gone through a physical. Y'all funded that annually for us now. We're into our second year, or fixing to be finishing up the first year, going into the second year. But this is allow our personnel to go off and get trained. It's based off of firefighter task. The International Association of Firefighters is the one that developed it in association with the International Association of Fire Chiefs. So it's a well-recognized program. We'll train, have peer fitness trainers that will oversee the program, and then it's about $25,000 worth of equipment.
interesting. Where do they train? Do they train at their respective fire stations, or do they go to a central location?
We do. We have small equipment at every station. We're also with the gymnasium out at the new location, the future home of Station 6, at the church on Hargrove. What we're looking at doing there is utilizing part of that and setting it up as a gymnasium where personnel can come on duty, off duty, and work out.
Okay. Committee members, any other questions or comments?
Motion approved.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, item is approved. Item number 3, Mr. Holmes, I believe the baton passes to the city attorney's office today as we continue our exploration of converting our pension fund to the RSA.
Yes, sir, and I think this portion of the conversation will probably be a little simpler than you may expect, because really this is, when you get down the road, there's probably too much detail to get into it at that level yet. So what I want to do is give you a general roadmap of what we're looking at, And how we're scheduled is, you're scheduled to hear from OCA on this on today, and then potentially again on the 22nd. What I'd like to do, because I don't have a ton to cover with you, frankly, today, is give you my roadmap and then take back any specific questions y'all have, because if you have specific questions as to the legal process of an RSA conversion, it may be something I can't answer off the top of my head today. I'd like the time over the next 2 weeks to be able to come back on the 22nd. I'll be on vacation, but somebody from my office, likely Mr. Bobbitt, will come back with specific answers on those things. That doesn't mean don't ask me today, because I may have them. What we'll generally be looking at is a 2-phase process. Now, those phases sort of blend. There's not a perfect delineation of them, but I think of them as the sort of pre-legislative steps, the planning up to going to the legislature to get an act passed, and then the legislative process. The first thing we really are going to need to do if we decide to really set this ship out to sea, I think y'all have probably pushed it off the dock into the harbor at this point, is to open for a formal official dialogue with RSA. Currently, we've had lots of informal dialogue, just sort of some fact finding, but an actual put the team together, sit down and start having real discussions that are less exploratory. RSA, one of the processes they'll do is they will complete a updated actuarial valuation and determine our annual contribution requirement. This is a part of the process that I'm sure Ms. Standrich, when she gets to her part, will talk about a lot more.
Scott, would you say that last sentence again, please? They, RSA,
RSA
will conduct an actuarial assessment.
Yes, sir.
And what? I thought you said
So I'm
two
sorry,
things.
Can I jump in real quick?
Sure.
So this is akin to the one that we're actually having done
So
right
we're
now.
paying for one actuarial assessment, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So we are paying for it to be done now so that we will have a planning tool.
And that's for us. We own that.
Correct.
But RSA is not bound to recognize or accept it, but as I understand it, it's the same actuarial firm that is their actuary, right? So there is,
It's not even just their actuarial firm. We are doing our valuation underneath their guidance and their proprietary information.
Okay.
They are allowing us to have our valuation done with their parameters specifically attached. Normally, that's not, so
So it ought to be pretty good.
Right.
So in comparison, we got the task force that was formed a couple of years ago, got a valuation done, but it was just on our own. It was still with the same firm, under the same just general thoughts and parameters, but there are specific proprietary pieces of information that can only be applied per RSA's allowance. We have now come under RSA's allowance. The last valuation that we had done, where we've mentioned that there's like an $8 million, $7.8 million additional cost amount, that one was also done under RSA's allowance.
well, it was.
It
All
was,
right.
yes, sir. This new one that we're having done is also under RSA's allowance. It's just 1 year later. Like I said, we're trying to create those planning tools to be able to know exactly what our cost is gonna be.
Okay, so go ahead.
So, sorry, I just wanted that to be clear.
I'm always happy to turn it over to Ms. Vandridge when we start talking numbers. I think of it akin to somebody coming to us with a piece of property. They may come to us with an appraisal, and they may have a great appraiser. We're still going to get our appraisal, and then we'll kind of talk about what's in between there. Once we have the sort of official numbers on those, then we'd work with RSA to look at a benefit comparison, and this is where we would look for the more apples to apples. This is what an RSA benefits would be. This is where our current benefits would be. One of the things that we will keep in mind during this entire process is looking out for litigation type pitfalls. We are very fortunate, I think we're going to be very fortunate in this process of the RSA benefits being so much better than our benefits. The typical litigation pitfall you would have with a conversion will hopefully be a non-issue for us. But this is where we really start to dig into that process to make sure any of our active members that are expecting this under the police fire pension plan don't get less than that under RSA, whatever those benefits may be. at some point, we'll shift over to the legislative process. Now, obviously, depending on timing and exactly how we go through this, some of these items kind of may change in order. If we're talking about going to get legislative authorization in the next session, but not actually pulling the trigger on the actual funding, the conversion for a number of years down the road, I would anticipate that RSA is going to want their official actuarial evaluation done much closer to that time, not pre-legislative. Does that make?
No, that's the question I was gonna ask is, how do you time those so that the actuarial assessment is not stale and its shelf life has expired in terms of how meaningful by the time you've gone through the legislative process, and found the money?
Yes.
So so I'm sorry, I jump in, but so normally, apparently Mr. Holmes does not mind, but normally RSA will do valuations every year. And so they will alert all of their plan sponsors, so the City of Tuscaloosa, our current RSA plan, they will alert us at the beginning of a calendar year if our employer contribution rate is changing. So they use that one specific rate for the full calendar year. They'll do another one at the end of the calendar year to update for the next one. It will be the same. So they will do, if we say that we're going to begin our conversion and start new benefit payouts January 1, 2027, they will perform an actuarial valuation November of 2026 that will then hold us for the entire calendar year of 2027. Then they'll do another valuation at the end of 2027 for 2028.
I don't follow. I mean, I understand one of the critical components is calculating how much benefits are gonna have to be paid out, right?
No, this is that valuation is for our employer contribution rate.
Our employee. All right, here's what I was gonna ask. Meanwhile, you got this big ball of investment assets on this side managed by the Tuscaloosa Fire and Police Pension Fund, and over here managed by RSA, and those are moving independently. There's no guarantee that they both go up this much or down this much in the elapsed time period. So that's what I'm trying to understand. Did that make any, Norman, Matthew,
Are
you,
you asking about how they value
I'm trying to
our
understand.
investments that are going to
So
transfer?
if they're going to tell us, here's what it's going to cost you to come in the door, Jack. That's based on their investment performance, our investment performance, and how much we're contributing and how much they're paying out, right?
Yes, sir.
It's a snapshot
Right.
of time.
Right, so
At
this.
that drop, at
and
that
you're saying
date,
that
this is
snapshot's
what
good
it
for a
costs.
year?
Yes, sir. Oh, well, I mean,
And isn't that
regard-
reevaluated, Carly, every year?
It gets
And-
it gets
and then-
reevaluated every year, and regardless of
Yeah.
what happens during the year. I mean, like truly, let's say that they've given us a rate of contribution starting January 1, 2027. July 1, 2027, the bottom falls out of the market, and we lose every penny of whatever they've got, like in our assets. We will still hold at that contribution rate
That's
until
right.
they reevalue
The
or
next year.
revalue at the end of that calendar year, and then we will have a new contribution rate starting the next one.
Thank you.
That's why it's,
And Carly, can I ask one other quick, sorry, Scott. Once that conversion is made at that particular point of time, there would be a calculation of what that pension liability is
Yes, sir.
because like right now, I'm assuming that pension liability is carried on our balance sheet
Yes, sir. it
for
is.
the non-police and fire. But what I'm saying, we have an amount that says this is what we potentially owe based on these calculations, right?
And yes, sir. And actually, the valuations that we've had done through Kavanaugh McDonald, the one prior and the one that we're having done right now, those will tell us a projected unfunded liability
Right.
for a converted full plan.
And we have to carry that on our books.
Yes, sir. We currently carry both debt already. We currently carry the RSA
And
unfunded
the
liability
other.
and the police and fire pension. Now, because the benefits are gonna go up, the unfunded liability from the police and fire pension,
Will be
as it
higher.
goes into RSA, is going to increase.
What is the unfunded liability right now for RSA for the regular employees of the
About
city?
35 million. The unfunded
What's
liability,
135?
She
no,
said
no, just 35
That's
million.
not bad.
The unfunded,
Unfunded liability is
I
35?
would have thought it'd been a lot more than that.
the unfunded liability for the current RSA plan is
Oh,
about
for the current
35 million.
Just the city employees.
The unfunded liability for the current police and fire pension is about 135 million. If we were to convert, as of the last time we did the valuation, the police and fire pension liability will increase to about 175 million, from 135 as it sits now.
All right, Scott, you want to pick it back up on the legal?
Yes, sir. I told Ms. Dandridge before I got up that nobody really cared about the lawyer stuff. All they wanted to hear about was the money. I think I was pretty accurate.
Keep us
He's proven that correct.
And listen, every step of the way, there's gonna be, little pivots and little other issues that come up that's just impossible to sort of go over in one big summary. My understanding is that RSA will sort of handhold and help us along the way. If we're willing to pay the money that they want for us to join RSA, they're very happy to have us. It benefits their plan
Right.
to grow their portfolio. The legislative process, and when I say legislative process, I mean literally the legislative process, but also other votes that are gonna have to happen, and that is here in this room or in council chambers, as well as with pension board and the membership. Those, again, the order of these, the way I say it, isn't necessarily important. It's the way I've thought about it. And so the first thing we'll need is local legislation from the state legislature. This is, I should have brought Montgomery's Act to give out to you guys. It's,
Well, first, we have to add it to our legislative agenda, right?
yes, sir, that'd be part of the process
That'll
of
be
getting it to local
January,
legislation.
February.
Ish, yes, sir. That is a local act, and so it doesn't have to, we don't require the full legislature. We need our local delegation to be committed. So that's our, I believe, total of 10 now senators and representatives to be on board. That makes it a little bit easier of a lift.
So it doesn't have to go and show up on a ballot like the ones did today?
No, sir, it wouldn't be on a ballot. It would just be our local delegation. I'm trying to think of a local bill we've done recently, potentially some of the ABC changes that we've done.
Or moving municipal election dates?
Moving municipal election dates. Although that would require the full legislation based upon it being codified. But so this council would need to adopt a resolution to join RSA ultimately, and that's kind of the end of the list. You have the local legislation that would happen that would authorize us. The local legislation wouldn't say, City of Tuscaloosa, the state's telling you have to do X. It would say, we authorize you to do this. Then we start looking at the actuarial numbers, all these other things. Then the pension board gets to vote on it. And the active members of the pension fund get to vote on it. And actually, a majority of them have to vote in favor. And
The members or the board?
the members. So the board has
Do
to
they have a
approve.
full vote,
The members have to vote.
total membership?
The active members, yes. sir.
Active,
Active members.
Not
Not anybody
those who are-
receiving benefits.
active is in actively receiving benefits?
No,
or
active is in actively employed.
working?
I wouldn't get to vote because I'm retired,
Okay.
not active.
Yes. sir.
So
And
when does, what's the time frame of all that? When does all that happen? When does it start happening?
I think we start with legislation, right, to authorize it, because that's the hurdle you're gonna have to get over. That hurdle also doesn't lock you into anything. And so I think you take that step first, and then I think you go pension board next.
And when will we be charged with doing that? I'm talking about the council.
That depends, well, so let me get, because we still have, sorry, I've kind of got myself out of order. Active members could opt out. And so if I'm currently a policeman, I could vote no and say, I don't want to join RSA. What would happen in that instance would take some looking at, but ultimately they would get a refund of what they've paid into the system. They would continue to be a Tuscaloosa police officer. They would not be an RSA member. They would not be a police and fire pension member. They could take their refund, put it in a 401k or whatever tax benefit there is for that, and they just wouldn't have anything withdrawn. They would be like they work for an employer with no retirement plan. That option would not be available for anyone that was hired after an RSA conversion. Anybody hired after an RSA conversion would be mandatory to go into RSA conversion. The council adoption is kind of one of the last steps. And it's hard to, I keep looking at Carly, it's hard to, since so many of these things really happen in tandem with each other, that it's all gonna need to be happening.
But based on where we are right now, what's the date that we're gonna do that? Because I know we've laid out this plan, Carly, we will receive what they think the conversion cost will be in December. Where does this end in December? I mean, because if you have the numbers, we've got to figure out how to pay for it, don't we? Before we can say that we're gonna.
And I think that was one of the reasons that
Yeah.
Scott was just kind of like, looking back and kind of going back and forth, is that it's not necessarily there's going to be anything that's cut and dry. I think that, like he said, I think that the next step we do know needs to be to get the legislature to allow us to do it. We do know that that's a kind of a hard and fast next step, but then after that, when the valuation comes back, we have to try to start working on strategic revenue planning. We'll need to start talking to the active pension members about when we could possibly schedule votes. If there is any extra, anything else that needs to happen along with that, we'll have to be working all of those steps in tandem.
Based on where we are right now, though, when does that process start? Does it start on that December 22nd meeting, or whatever it is that week? Does it start in, when does that process start? Does it start at the end of these several weeks of discussions, or?
So this is my general opinion, and
Yeah.
and the mayor is not here, and so I'm literally going off of what I think would be for financial, professional opinion. I think that it would be somewhat detrimental to put the cart before the horse of making any additional votes prior to knowing that the revenue is going to be sustainable to be able to get you there. I don't think that you would want to vote to convert unless you knew that there's going to be a way to pay for it.
So based on your knowledge of where we are in this, what is our time frame? I'm not gonna hold you to this, but on November the 8th, here where we're sitting today, when would you expect all of that information to be to us, where we make that decision and then we ask to do the process, to go to the legislature, all that? Is that a year away? That's not this session?
I think that the legislature would
It
be
could be
having this
this-
session.
You could potentially go to the legislature this session.
This session?
Because that authorizes you to start moving forward, and you know you're gonna have that hurdle, and that hurdle doesn't tie you to anything. Going to the legislature, there are any number of entities that have gone to the legislature, gotten the authorization, gotten here and said, oh, it's gonna cost what? Never mind, and said, we'll stay over here where we are. So going to the legislature is a great first step, but it also doesn't tie your hands. I do think once you then matriculate down to council adopting a resolution to join RSA, that then starts setting conversion dates and employee participation dates.
So asking the legislature in the next session to allow us that option, that happens, and that's not really, we just have an option to do it.
Yes.
But the specific vote where the council says we want to do this comes much later than that. Robert, once all this due diligence is done.
That sets a conversion, that sets a conversion date, that sets an employee participation date. So you're gonna want to know how much it's gonna cost for certain, how we're gonna pay for it for certain, I'm assuming. And RSA is gonna, I don't think RSA is going to allow you to take that vote and set a conversion date out too far. I don't
Right.
know what that exact time limit would be, but I don't think they would let you vote today to do the
Sure,
conversion
because
in
the number
27.
could be radically different with
Yes.
what we're agreeing to, but maybe I need to, I'm not doing a good job asking my question. based on what you know today, and again, that could change, I understand tomorrow. When are we gonna have numbers to sit here and say, this is the plan, we agree to the plan, and then you move to that step and say, we wanna do this, this is it? Where are we right now? What date, when do you think that'll be?
So the mayor has definitely mentioned a 3 to 5 year window for actual conversion. So if we're taking a 3 to 5 year window for like the actual conversion date, I would think that there would need to be a resolution before the council to vote on a contractual agreement with RSA, because that's what we're really talking about. We're talking about a contractual agreement with RSA, not anything that is much more informal in nature. We're talking about the actual formality of joining RSA. I would think that would need to happen 12 months before a conversion date. You wouldn't want to push out a conversion for more than 12
But
months.
when do you think we'll be in a position to know all those numbers, to know it's gonna cost us blank? Based on, I mean, I understand that can change when the final, but are we gonna know that in 3 months? Are we gonna know that in
Cost, we're gonna
January?
get in late December if it's on time, right?
We're gonna know that in December, I mean,
The new valuation will be ready middle of December.
all right, so we know that number, and then the how to pay for it part comes in after that, to
Yeah.
figure that out. That ain't gonna happen in December, is it? None of that?
You know, I think that the idea of like a strategic revenue plan about how to pay for it, we should, we're starting on it now.
I know
So but it will be continuously evolving and continuously moving, I would say, at least for the next year.
And it's something we've been working on for years. I mean, just look back at the medical marijuana, we specifically went ahead and carved out that public safety fund portion for the profits of that. There have been little tweaks here and there over the last at least year and a half since I've been in this position that have said, hey, we're gonna go ahead and see that new little revenue source, we're gonna push that over here to public safety fund to start growing that cash pot for our.
And the university with alcohol,
Right.
correct?
So,
How soon could we go to the legislature then in their spring session?
I believe we go to the legislature this term.
Just to get permission to do it.
Yeah.
But I'm still confused on when are we actually gonna make the actual decision on the go to do
So-
it?
I would think that there would be a formal vote before the city council to go or not go, 2025.
That long?
Yes, sir. If we're talking about converting in 2026,
Oh, if you're talking about, okay.
2027, 2026, 2027, yes, I would think that there would be a formal vote before you in 2025. Now, again, that is the last step. Well, like Mr. Holmes said, that the vote before, the formal vote before the city council was kind of like the last step in all of these
Yeah,
machinations.
but we're gonna know what the shortfall, based on where we are right now, we're gonna know that before the end of the year. What our shortfall is to make all that up, right? What we're gonna have to search and cut and paste and,
We will
do
know the
everything.
most updated amount,
This,
middle of
We're
December.
gonna get an update to that $8 million a year number sometime in the second half of December.
Yes, sir.
And then given that mark on the wall, we're gonna have to start chipping away at how are we gonna get to that much, you know, we can, you know, we get this much from here, we can cut this much out of the budget here, we can get revenues from the university or not here, we can turn in returnable bottles and have parking meters, but there's gonna
I'm
be
joking about a bake sale, yeah.
some big bake sale, some big number. By the way, are we,
I said bake
Bake
sale
sale.
and calendars.
Are we
so-
allowed-
The chief's volunteering to
are
head
we
that up.
allowed to borrow any of this money?
Mm.
There's no asset backing it, it's an operating cost, we can't
It's an obligation.
borrow
You
that.
can borrow under a general obligation.
I don't think you'd hear either one of us suggest.
That's not going to be an option that
Now,
I
I'm
would
not,
put
I'm
out
not
there.
proposing it, but I wanna know if legally, is it proscribed?
It is allowed.
It's allowable.
I would love to have a vote of the council, you said 2025 before the election. I would.
May- if
I'm
I-
fine with
If I may, I talked to we're not gonna have any trouble getting this through the legislature. I would be shocked if they didn't let us do this, from the discussions I've had.
No.
Well, quite frankly, if you were gonna have trouble getting it through the legislature, I think one of the reasons to go early on that is you learn this session, you're gonna have trouble, and you can work on that over,
Yeah.
without slowing anything
Yeah,
down.
but I don't think it will be.
Carly, double check. So late December, we're gonna get a mark on the wall. It's right there. It went from 8 to 14, okay? Or something. And then we're gonna start trying to put together the plan for how are we going to get to that, right? Meanwhile, every year, that mark is changing, right? Either up or down.
Yes, sir.
So that becomes more of a process than an event at that point.
Correct, which is why I call them planning tools, just because
Okay.
they're not
Unless
gonna be
it-
hard and fast in
All right.
anything. But I do think that they provide good information.
All right?
The sort of final legal aspect we have, I told you earlier on that we kind of are weighing litigation, potential liabilities as we go through this process. Where's something that's gonna give somebody a cause to action to sue us over the process? I really don't think, based upon a strict benefit analysis, there will be any A, complaints, or B, any liability. The two areas that we're gonna have to look at further where there may be are gonna be relatively rare, but it's something we're gonna have to ultimately make decisions on as we get down the line. And one of those will be, we may have people, I don't know, is Police Academy RSA? The APOS folks?
Yes.
And so you may have instances, probably less of instances with our police officers, but we may have active members in the fire department who are working for the fire college. The fire college is currently in RSA. You wouldn't be able to do both of those things at the same time. And so that's something we're gonna have to figure out as we get there. About how many people do you think we would have in that boat?
Get 2 of mine, part-time and full-time, a dozen.
So that's something we'll keep in our mind and know now to get there. Also, there may be instances, depending on years of service changes. If somebody was able to retire with 20 years of service in our current program, if the years of service requirement is 25 at RSA, then somebody at 19 years may have a complaint. Those are things that we are cognizant of now. We will monitor and work our way through as we go through the process on the legal side. I really think that your potential liabilities, your number of people that it affects detrimentally are probably going to be small enough that the full benefit of something like this, that's just something that may cost you a little money over here. Are there any, I know we've had a lot of questions, and I know Ms. Standrich's numbers are far more interesting than any of my legal process, but is there anything that comes to
So
your
I have one that's probably a hybrid between finance and legal. Some point down the road, when we're at the point of execution here, are all of the current fire and police pension fund assets and liabilities simply dumped into RSA, or does anything remain over here?
My understanding is that it will have to be liquidated and cash transferred to RSA, but I'll let Ms. Standrich correct me if I'm.
So normally when there's a conversion for a retirement plan, there's going to be what we call a blackout period. And so you'll have, usually it's about a month, where you will completely freeze all transactions in the old fund. You'll do a full accounting, and then that liquidation and then transfer will happen within that 1 month period. And so yes, it will be all, assets, and then, really just all assets will be transferred over to RSA to be given to that account, and then they will give us the new liability at that juncture.
But all the people who are already retired, they will go into RSA also, or does any remnant of the fire and police pension remain to pay them out
So it is,
until
They
completion?
will, my understanding is that money will go to RSA, and RSA will continue to pay
Paying
them
them
their
out
current
exactly
benefits.
what they
Yes.
were receiving, right?
Basically, there is a contractual agreement with all retirees that they were going to retire and be paid out paid out X benefit. So that agreement will then transfer to RSA. They'll get the exact same payout that they were getting. It'll just have a Retirement Systems of Alabama check on it instead of the City of Tuscaloosa Police and Fire Pension Fund.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Anything else?
Mr. Wilson, Mr.
That's not exciting.
Come on.
Any
Come on,
other,
something.
Kip?
No, the only question, I mean, I take it for granted, the pension board will go away.
Yeah, they would vote to dissolve at the end of this, yes, sir. And listen, I know we have some of our interested members here. I know you guys will be hearing from members and probably current retirement beneficiaries. If you get anything that needs to bounce over to us, email me, and certainly if our folks can email me. We have an expert on this that we're talking to, because this is.
So we have engaged outside attorney for this?
Yes, sir. Currently, I've been working with a gentleman named Jimmy King. He is an attorney at Maynard Cooper. They've dealt with these scenarios before, and actually, it was a big benefit to us when I reached out to him. The pension board had actually hired Mr. King to look at this previously, so he, somebody else has already paid a lot of money for him
Who
to learn the
pays
ins
for
and
that,
outs of our
Scott?
system.
Is the existing pension plan paying for that with
The-
advice, or are we the city paying for it? or
The
what?
pension plan paid for what he has done in the past for them. My office pays for anything he does as part of this process from our outside services line.
Are we seeing that come to us?
That comes through y'all
Do
through
the budget.
budgeting my outside services.
I don't have any other questions for today. If there are, either of you have any questions, comments? If there now opens up some white space on these multi-meetings because we've compacted the legal side into something else, then Ms. Standridge, let you and I and the mayor get together and talk about what to put in that.
Yes, sir. I'm
So
out of
originally you
town
were
also on the
programmed for
22nd, so I don't know
Huh?
if, I'm also out of town on the 22nd. So that week of Thanksgiving, I'm also out. So our presentations really were planned for that first one of December. And that was how we were, I guess,
Okay.
working towards.
All right.
But if something comes up in the intervening time, we'll still have that sort of bookmarked, and somebody else from OCA will be throwing out.
All right. If no other questions or any other business to come before the finance committee.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.